Welcome to the Real Estate Syndication Show. Whether you are a seasoned investor or building a new real estate business, this is the show for you. Whitney Sewell talks to top experts in the business. Our goal is to help you master real estate syndication. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today, our guest is Bruce Wuollett. Thanks for being on the show, Bruce.
Thank you for having me on your show, Whitney. I appreciate the opportunity.
No, we're honored to have you here. And a little about Bruce. He's the founder and current owner of Bakerson. Growing up in the bakery business in the Twin Cities of Minnesota, Bruce wanted to pay homage to his now late father, hence the name Bakerson. He has a proven track record of success throughout Bakerson's 16 years in business with thousands of individual units bought, repositioned, and sold. Has overseen all aspects of the business, including operations, acquisition, equity, fund management, legal, finance, and more. His focus is finding good deals, while his passion is serving the residents by providing them with one of their basic human needs, which is shelter. So, Bruce, thank you again, for your time this morning. Give the listeners a little more about your background, and I know you wanted to, make sure and elaborate on the name Bakerson and tell them about that, and then, let's dive into this business and your all specialty.
Sure. I got into real estate and tax lien foreclosures 2001. And in 2002, I wanted to find a different way to buy properties. And so we ended up door knocking the old-fashioned way and finding properties that way. And I needed a name for my business. And I remember I was driving south on Highway 51 when the name came to me. And I said, I grew up in a bakery. I'm a baker's son. And so then at that time, my dad was suffering from cancer. So when I mentioned it to him, he thought it was really neat, and he was pretty touched by the fact that we named the business. When I say we, I had a business partner, Jack Martin, at the time, who's still a very good friend. We went different ways 3 years ago, but his dad also worked in the bakery business, and he worked for my grandfather in the Wuollett Bakery in Minneapolis, which is still in business. So, we paid homage to my father and his father. It's just it's out of respect, and we really like the name Bakerson, and it means something special to us.
Nice. So, but now, give us a little bit about what Bakerson's doing now. What your all's business is, and then let's jump in.
Absolutely. So our current business is focusing on workforce or Class C housing, and when I say workforce, we focus on the self-paying resident, the ones that have jobs, they have decent credit. Maybe not perfect, but they're what I say is our focus is the permanent renter, one who may never own a home and would like to live in one, and treating each resident with the dignity they deserve. And currently our assets are in Tucson. We have 3 buildings there. We've been selling some during this hot market cycle, and we're also still finding a good deal here and there. Well, we found one recently after about 30 to 40 offers in the last 15 months, where we've got one in escrow to purchase in Tucson as we speak. So it's been a little bit tough, but it's a good time to sell too. So
good.
Assets.
Yeah. So, I guess give us I know you talked about Class C properties and give us the typical asset that you all are looking for, maybe your buying criteria.
Okay. We own a 75 unit and up. The largest that we've had is 120. Current assets are 74, 75, and 107. We really like the heavy lifting. The 74 unit that we have, it was 50% occupied when we bought it. We brought it to 20 or 75% vacant and repositioned it and brought it back up. So we're not afraid of the heavy lifting. And to know during that time, there's no cash flow. We syndicate, so the investors fund our dreams for us alongside of us. As I like to say, they club with us. And so that's the heavier the lift, the better. But we're having a hard time finding those nearly abandoned buildings because the market, as it is, as you know, has sucked up most of those assets. So that's
a great topic. Yeah, let's jump into that. So can we elaborate on that property that went 50% occupied, or if it was 50% when you all purchased it? Maybe let's give us some details about that property and let's kind of walk through what you all did.
Absolutely. So this was run by a local slumlord, and she ran the property very, very poorly and was cannibalizing units, taking refrigerators from one unit and put it to the other. And eventually she ran out of inventory. You can only take from yourself so long and you run out of inventory. So she was in a downward spiral. The other issue we had with that property when we bought it was the chiller system was aging and there was water leakage underground. And we could tell because if you know chiller systems, I don't want to get too granular, but there's a meter that if the meter is moving, there's a water leak. It's a sealed system. Well, it was moving slowly. And so we were concerned about that during our due diligence. So we said, hey, let's go look at that one again. Look at the chiller system, kind of analyze it, figure out what's going on. And when we were there, the on-site manager was repairing 17 feet of underground pipe under 2 units and said that the pipe had burst underground. And when we looked at it, we seen that when a pipe is broken and you patch it, wherever you patch it's going to break again and again and again, and you're chasing this issue and you'll never resolve it. And so we said, okay, we got to replace the whole piping system. And so we went in for a $250,000 seller credit, which she agreed to because this property was a sinkhole for her and she was running out of options. And so we ended up replumbing the chiller system on the exterior of the building underneath the walkways. And it looks it looks modern and it's turned out really nice because to go underground would have been nearly cost prohibitive to repipe it underground. And so that was our value add there, as well as the units themselves were pretty rough. So we stripped many of them down to the studs, new drywall, new cabinets, new flooring, new plumbing fixtures. And in our properties, we do like to do low flow toilets. So that's another thing for water usage. And I don't know how far you want to get into that, but
yeah, well, let's back up just a little bit. And like, how did you find this property?
This was through a broker, a local broker in Tucson said, hey, I found the perfect property for you guys. And so it was a local broker.
Okay. And then, what did you see first about the property? What was the age and the occupancy and some of that was first presented to you?
The property is built in the mid-'70s, and it's you could see it was neglected. There was broken fencing. There were a couple of boarded units. It was very ugly. A high crime report. When we seen the financials, it was 50% vacant, and it was a money loss month after month after month. The owner had a mortgage on it as well, so it was negative cash flow. So people say, well, what cap rate do you buy at? Well, when there's negative cash flow, there's no cap rate, right?
Yeah. So this, why are you looking for a property like that? Most people are going to go, wait a minute, I don't want to get into that big of a mess. So what's the value that you've seen there?
There's something extremely satisfying to see the impact it has on the community. When we go in and there's high crime and there's a lot of 911 calls, and when the police department asks that, why are you buying this property? We get a lot of calls in here, and then 3 to 6 months later, they say, you know what, I really like what you're doing. Some of these properties are getting 90 to 100 911 calls a month, and they might run into 9 a month after a few short months of us owning it. So I have a theory that I actually borrow from a guy that I met in Dallas, Texas, that says if you clean up the trash, the rats will leave. And so it's a kind of a colorful analogy, but we clean up the problems, and most of the criminals they're not confrontational unless you confront them in aggression. We're passive on how we approach them and ask them to leave and clean up the place, and eventually they don't feel comfortable there anymore. But when you drive by a property and if it's boarded and ugly, we always say, hey, there's a Bakerson special. We want this asset. And so we're not afraid of the heavy lifting, and we're not scared of that at all.
Okay. So when you first went in, what was occupancy?
50%.
50%. So when you first went in, and then obviously high crime, you said 90 to 100 911 calls every month. I mean, that's a substantial or a property, Class C or worse, it sounds like, but it's awesome that you all can see the value and then you're going to make that happen. So walk us through getting a deal like that closed, or maybe even some things we should think about in the due diligence process of purchasing a property like that. Why would I want to buy a property like that? And what are some things I need to know?
Well, what you see is on the back end, the broker that we worked with showed what the rents are in the neighborhood, and we push the rents up to market. We don't push market. We're not creating a property we're not gentrifying. In fact, we're not making it from a C to a B or from a B to to a B plus. That's not our niche. Our niche is to not hurt the person. Never hurt the ones we're trying to help. And so if it's a Class C workforce, which this one's an Amphi neighborhood in Tucson, it's workforce, it's blue collar, and so we focus on keeping it better than what it is and becoming the diamond, if you will. Like people say you're looking for, like when they're finding a property, they say, we're looking for the diamond in the rough. And I say, no, I'm looking for the rough in the diamond. There's a value add opportunity when the property is ugly. And then from the pro forma numbers that the broker shared with us, you could see that, okay, if we went from here to here, this is what the property will be worth. And we're up nearly 90% full there now. So I know the numbers work. We're seeing the cash flow. And when you buy something like that, there's a couple of things. One is you're not going to get bank financing unless you have a fortress balance sheet and you have something else to leverage or some other relationship with your bank. But for most syndicators and operators, this is not going to get bank financing. The banks, they don't even walk away from it, they run because it appears to be high risk. So we're looking at hard money. And initially on this one, I believe we had like 11% money, and then we brought it down, refied it after a year, and it's at just under 9. So it's still not, with the value of or with the interest rates where they are, it's still kind of expensive. But now that we're getting stabilized, we'll be 90 for 90. We can go Fannie Freddie on this one, since we get in more what we did, but we did the chiller system, and the parking lot as well was like pulverized powder, and now it's all brand new. So when you get into that, realize that you're selling the dream, and you're not buying it for what it is, but for what it can become. And look around the surrounding neighborhoods. If the surrounding neighborhoods, the properties are all the same, you're probably in too high of a risk. You want to look and say, okay, there's a property a block away that's an apartment that is making the turn. I don't like to be the first person to make a turn in the neighborhood or a stabilized asset, but being the last one is actually sometimes can be very good. But there's a few other assets in there that are low rough, a little more rugged. And then there's 2 or 3 on that same block after we purchased ours and cleaned it up. And first thing was repainted it and cleaned up the trash. 2 or 3 up the same street. Ended up, it's on stone in Tucson, but the other ones were getting cleaned up as well. So we're like, well, that was magic how it all happened at the same time. But I think they were influenced by what we were doing. And then the next neighbor said, hey, I got to do something. I'm going to lose some residents here if I don't take care of them.
So how many units was this property?
74.
74.
We brought it down to 17 occupied during the repositioning. So it was a ghost town.
Tell me how you planned for something like this. So like, when you're looking at this property, say even before you put it under contract, how should your underwriting differ, or for this planning, of going down to 17 occupied? I mean, how do you plan for that? And how do you even talk to investors about this type of opportunity? But let's back up to how you plan, how you underwrite. So
the underwriting is, we take the pro forma. What can we get for rents, and what is the expense ratio on this one? Is probably, since it's a master metered, older, not super old, but 40 plus property, it's probably going to take 50 to 55% expense ratio in the beginning until you can stabilize some of the water usage and the electricity, because it's all master metered. All utilities are paid by the landlord or the owner. And then there's a couple different ways that can be underwritten. And one way that we really like is this one has 7 buildings. You just do building by building. Okay, once we stabilize this building and it's all occupied, this is what it will spit out in NOI, and break it down into individual buildings and then individual units. And when you break it down into individual units, say, okay, the repairs on this, we bought it for $23,000 a unit. We're going to repair it for 11. So we're into it for 35. I think we're into it for actually 37. We're a little bit over budget. But you look at that and you say, but on the back end, based on the rental comps and just standard 7 cap, this thing's worth 49 to 52 a door on the back end as an occupied performing asset. So those are some of the higher level views that we do, but we break it down per unit. We take pictures of every unit and what's going to be done in every single unit into spreadsheets, and then break them down into, like I said, in buildings, and then you got the whole complex. So it's if you take it into small bite-sized pieces, like the analogy says, how do you eat an elephant? 1 bite at a time. Same thing with this, 1 unit at a time. And
so there's about 10 units per building, roughly.
Right.
And so are you saying, okay, if it takes us a month to turn over 1 building, we're going to have 10 units vacant per month for every month, or did you underwrite or plan for more than that?
I'd have to look back at because we were looking at 18 months to stabilization, 18 to 24. And so let's say 24 months. So you just take the 24 months, divide by how many units, 74, how many you have to turn, because all of them are going to get turned. There was none of them that were like, wouldn't be touched. There was no model unit there. Let's just put it that way. So yeah, it would just back it out to months, and then you put in a reserve of time and a reserve of cash to cover any missteps or any challenges along the way. Because things always, as soon as your model is made, we all know it's broken. It changes once you get into it, right?
And how much reserve should we allow for taking on a property like this?
That is a property by property estimate, but something like this, probably 50 to 75,000 in reserves for the construction side, and then probably more than that in for negative cash flow. So you're looking at probably 150 to 200, probably 200,000 in total reserves to cover the negative cash flow as well.
Yeah. So give us the business plan now, for this property, or maybe take us from closing and what you all did, and then let's talk about the plans moving forward.
So the first thing you do is you do an audit of the units. What happened was this: when we got there, the leases were gone. The file cabinets were empty. So we called up. So what happened? She says, "Well, I'm going to scan them in and get them back to you." Well, we never seen those, so we had to recreate these leases. We had to talk to the people and ask them questions. Where is their lease? When is their lease up? And we took it at face value, recreated, the whole the leases, the lease audit, and the financials. We had to recreate them all. And then some people said, "Hey, I haven't paid for 3 months." I mean, they were pretty honest when we asked them. We said, "Okay, what do you want to do to get out of this challenge, this problem?" And we say, "Hey, I tell you what, if you bring it current today, we'll just go from this day forward. Any back due, we'll just let it go." And they were pretty grateful. And then there was some that were pretty adamant. You could tell that things weren't all there. So we started doing some background checks and getting rid of a few that were problematic. But we had no issues with leases after that. After we created the new leases and new documents, it was pretty amazing actually that we didn't get more kickback. And then once you've got that, they say, "Okay, we're going to decide which buildings to go to first, which ones are the worst, are there health and safety issues?" And you walk through each building again and determine which ones are health and safety. Those are first. The grounds, we had some issues with fencing and gates. We got rid of some fencing to open it up a little bit. And then the chiller system was, like I said, it was broken. So we put that in, and that took, I think, about 4 months for them to repipe that. And so during that time, we had to put different valves at different buildings because it had one valve for the whole complex. And so we had installed valves at each building for the water flow, and then at each unit. And then we had to turn the buildings off, replumb it, turn them back on. So we had to make sure there was no residents in those units, so that they didn't have, they have to have heat or AC depending on the time of the year. So as we did that building by building and got the chiller system was priority. And then the internal unit turns, we hired a crew that went unit by unit and turned those units. And they would actually by building. So they'd go through and they'd got all the units in one building. Then they'd go through and re-drywall, all new electrical, plumbing fixtures, cabinets, flooring, paint. I guess I got the kind of out of order, but you get the drift.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you about like the plumbing and electric as well. Did you have to replace all that?
The fixtures, almost all the fixtures had to get replaced, but the electrical and the plumbing, the water system was okay for the for showers and tubs and sinks. Those worked all right, and the electrical was fine. Mostly just fixtures on those.
Is it copper, aluminum wiring?
Copper wiring and copper plumbing throughout.
Okay.
So yeah, we sometimes you run into the cast iron or cast iron plumbing, or the aluminum or galvanized plumbing and aluminum, and that tends to be a problem with the water.
So what kind of let's say it did have aluminum wiring or cast iron plumbing, things like that. Since you're looking for properties like this, is that something you would tend to replace or plan to replace? And what kind of problems would come from that?
If it's functioning, we probably wouldn't replace it like all at once. Like the aluminum wiring, as this becomes a problem, but maybe unit by unit. But we have not run into a lot of the electrical issues that you would think you have had. Like we've had buildings. One of the buildings, a 34 unit, had the fuses, twist fuses, and we left those in. And it was $8,000 to $10,000 per unit to upgrade that. But we were running into any issues. There was no challenges with that, so we left them in there and we sold it like that. And It works. So
Does it have aluminum wiring?
It does not. I'm trying to recall. I'd have to check. I don't know that we've had any recently that have had aluminum wiring. Generally, we just left it if it's working.
Okay, cool. No, that's awesome. And so what's the plan moving forward with this property? What's like the hold time and your all's business plan?
Well, this one here, we do have a partner on it, so we're working on should we keep it or should we sell it. I'd really like to keep that one. We put a lot into it, and we got a really low basis, and it's good cash flow. So we're going to, in fact, as soon as it's stabilized, we're either going to we're going to find out what the market says the value is and what they're willing to pay for it. But we may not list it yet. We'll go to Fannie and Freddie, get some loan quotes, and see what it would be for a 3 to 5 year hold. I like the 10-year hold, but a lot of the investors want 3 to 5 years. And I said, you know what? I guess we could do a 3 to 5 year, but I like the 10-year just because it's a longer time to get through a cycle. They said, well, 10 years is a long time. We don't know where the market's going to be in 10 years. And I said, well, you don't know where the market's going to be in 3 years either. It can change fast. It's all a risk, right? So my plan, that's my long answer to, I'd like to hold that one a longer period.
So how do you sell that property to investors when it's, it seems like higher risk to most investors, right? When they see, it's so rough, or you're going to have to turn this many units, or you're going to have to take it down to, 17 units occupied. I mean, that's pretty severe. So, how do you have that conversation? What are some of the questions that we should be prepared for?
Well, it comes down to track record, I guess. I'd have to, it's been 5 years since our first property, which we completely vacated, gutted, and repositioned. And we did that with a friend, one investor. So we got the track record in place. Without a track record, it's going to be a challenge to overcome. So they have to believe in you as a person and you as a team, and see the team you have and what is your exit strategy. And then also, what if it doesn't work? What are you going to do if you don't meet the numbers? Where's my security? And there is an element of anxiety, I guess, for some of the investors to see. Like we had some investors that looked at the properties as, if I'd have seen what that was when you bought it, I probably wouldn't have invested, but I believe in you. And so I did. So that's part of it. And if you get too into the detail and show pictures and share the 911 calls, and if there's been any murders or gang activities, you got to be careful how you present that. You don't want to not disclose it. You don't want to hide it. But you also got to be careful. You can't paint such a scary picture that they don't want to invest in it either. But typically by showing, here's the surrounding community, here's what's going on at the neighbor's property. There's a school across the street. They're putting a QT, quick trip gas station up the road. It's an up and coming, so that it's relatively safe. And here's how we're going to make a difference internally. Why you qualified? We have good subs. We've got the HVAC for the chiller system. We've got a company that's been in the business many years, and they know what they're doing. We've got a contractor who's going to come in and do the electrical from Phoenix, and he's a guy that's got a lot of experience. And we show the team, not only our team, but our subs and our vendors, and then our property managers. We have a property manager that's established in the area and has a lot of experience in turning vacant units and pushing rents to market. And then we show their resume. And when they see the whole team, they say, okay, these guys got it. These guys can handle it.
And tell us what kind of financing you ended up getting on this property initially.
Initially, we got 80% hard money. It was at 11% and payable monthly. So we had to have the investor. We raised the capital. We had the investors pay for the negative cash flow, because at 50 units, we're not cash flowing even with a bank loan, let alone 11% hard money loan. So we had figured it'd be 9 months to a year before we even got back to occupied enough building to pay for the loan itself. And so right now there is a small cash flow, but we're at I think it's around just under 9% of the current money. But yeah, we came in with 11% money. We've been as high as 12 to 13 on the high risk buildings, but then you just have to shrink the site, shrink the construction period, and the stabilization period must be shrunk, and you push really hard to get residents in as fast as you can.
So you raised all the capital to purchase the building, and then you plan to do a refi once it's stabilized.
Yes.
Nice. All right. So before we run out of time, just a few more questions for you, Bruce. And what's a way that you've recently improved your business that we could all apply to our syndication business as well?
The most valuable thing we did was to create a clarity on who we are, who are we, and where are we going. And there was a question that I asked myself: where am I going, and who am I taking with us? And getting the team to to rally behind me is really exciting. And, I have a family business. My son is in the acquisitions. My son-in-law is in the property management, the project management and materials. And my brother does our capital stack and fund modeling. He creates the documents. And then I have a brother-in-law is our asset manager. And then we have a few others that I say are adopted family members. But we run it that way, that we have a shared vision, that our goal is to create communities which are safe, functional, durable, and clean, and to treat each and every resident with dignity. And we have that, and people see that happening. The employees go down the properties and they see the difference. That's what gets people to really back what we're doing and creating a good team effort. And that's probably the biggest thing we did in the last year, was creating the clarity in the vision.
And what's been the hardest part of this syndication business for you?
It depends on where we are in the timing. Like, it was for a while there, it was getting enough capital. We were finding more deals than we could find capital. And so we picked up in 2.5 years, picked up 9 properties in Tucson, smallest being 12 units and the largest being 80. And then we bought a 27 unit next door to the 80. And so we have 107 units, which is our largest asset we currently own in Tucson. So when we came that, we were getting more deals than we could find money. We just saw the dream. And then those got funded. And now then we went 14 or 15 months with 30, 40 offers with 0 acceptances. And then we had a dearth of inventory. So it's always changing. But probably the largest challenge is when we're getting from a small syndicated business to growing up and leaving the friends and family network and reaching out to the community at large to find investors. That's probably been the toughest growing pain, is getting total strangers to give you $100,000 to invest in a project. That is a big hurdle, emotionally, psychologically, as well as for the investor.
Is there one thing you can leave us with there as far as how you've overcome that?
It's just being authentic, being real. Don't sugarcoat anything. I say I may have grown up in a bakery, but this isn't a bakery, so I don't sugarcoat anything. You tell it like it is, and they either buy into it or they don't. And if they do, great. We've got a partnership. If they don't, that's okay. Keep them in the Rolodex for those that know what a Rolodex is, and we'll reach out to them at a later date.
Rolodex is an old CRM, right?
That's right. That's it. Just sharing, just being real and being authentic, and don't try to create something that's not true, because that's gonna come back and bite you in the end, and we all know that.
What's your best advice for caring for investors?
Best advice for taking care of the investors is communication. That's probably one area we had a little bit of speed bumps on our way, is communicating with the investors. I figured, hey, no news is good news, and we have an 18-month project, and they get to month 14, they haven't heard a thing. They have no idea if we're even still in business. So we found out that they need either monthly or quarterly reports, because there's no payouts during these negative cash flow. There's two transactions. We take the money in, and then we sell the project, we return the capital. So in between there's a lot of silence. So communication is key. Keep them updated on what you're doing with the project. That is very, very important. And if you have a hiccup or have a problem, share it. Do not hide it. Tell them, hey, we're going to have a little delay here. It's not going to be as smooth as we thought. It's still safe, and here's why, and here's our way to get out of it. So if you have a problem, also provide a solution to how you're going to get out of that problem. Great
advice, Bruce. And then what's the number one thing that's contributed to your success?
Perseverance. Never give up. And then having the vision to see, the second part of this, having the vision to see what something can become. If I see a vacant piece of land, I can't envision Class A apartments. I look at what they do. I said, man, there's a visionary. But I can see somebody else's building and say, ooh, I can take this and make something special of it. And so that's those two areas: perseverance, and then having the vision to see what it's like when it's complete.
And before we have to go, tell us how you like to give back.
Giving back is something that's very important. And one area is just helping each resident. I walk the properties, and I make sure that the residents are treated with the dignity they deserve. And so many property owners forget about that, or they're detached from that. So we give back specifically to the residents by providing them with a place that's safe, functional, durable, and clean. And in return, they pay us rent. And it's been very good for us.
Nice. So Bruce, you've been a great guest. I really appreciate your time and you sharing, just this type of property. We don't get too many people that will take on that heavy of a lift, in these properties that we're discussing in the syndication business, and are thankful for you sharing your expertise. But tell the listeners how they can get in touch with you.
Well, they can go to our website, bakerson.com, Bakerson, bakerson.com, or send me an email, bruce@bakerson.com.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by Life Bridge Capital. Life Bridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. Life Bridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.